Let me just start the program by saying this. The sickening exploitation by the Democrats and the left for what's happened in Hawaii knows no bounds. They say this is an example of climate change. We need to do more. No, it's an example of an electrical wire, apparently, busting from its moorings and setting on fire the area around it that was dry, and individuals responsible for setting off the siren refusing to do so, some convoluted logic, and one individual responsible for supplying the water to the fire departments there, holding back. That's what's responsible for it. Climate change, which bases virtually every energy component on electricity. Like I said, the sickening irony is that it wasn't gasoline, it wasn't oil, it wasn't coal, it was electricity. And that this utility was using its funds to try and address and accommodate the radical left and their climate change agenda rather than shoring up existing energy delivery systems. Now, that's what happened, as far as we know. It's nothing to do with climate change. Hawaii is hit with high winds. Hawaii is a group of islands in the middle of nowhere, the Pacific. They have hurricanes. They have all kinds of stuff going on out there, having nothing to do with climate change. And this is exactly why more people will die over the course of this climate change radical Marxist agenda, because rather than address the true problems, they just keep funding utopia. And utopia is going to kill us. Now, I want to move on. I told you months ago that this would catch fire, so to speak, and it is. This whole idea of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, people have been poo-pooing it. They're poo-pooing it because it's ridiculous. But what's not ridiculous is how people are destroying the Constitution while they claim to be defending it. How people are destroying law and order while they pretend to be defending it. And it's the same damn people over and over and over again. That is the Democrat Party Marxists and the willing accomplices who may not even identify with the Democrat Party, but wittingly or unwittingly, they are doing the dirty work. There's a piece in the Atlantic Monthly, I guess, the Atlantic, by Michael Ludig and Lawrence Tribe. Lawrence Tribe hasn't been right about anything in 20 years. And Michael Ludig, in my view, is off his rocker. And it's getting worse by the day. And they write this truly stupid piece in the Atlantic. And it goes on and on and on. They don't have the foggiest idea what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment means. Nothing. It's almost never used. It was clearly passed after the Civil War to prevent people who led the Confederacy from serving as officials in state and federal government. The name president doesn't even appear in the amendment, not even in that section. So first of all, you have to parse the word officers of the government in order to include the president, even though they mention senators, congressmen, state legislatures, state offices, but for some reason they leave out president. Don't worry, the originalists, so-called, like Michael Ludig, he'll find a way to get it in there. Then they say it was written with precision and thoroughness. Nothing thorough about it. There's nothing precise about it. Every one of those amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th, are called Civil War amendments. The same Democrats who've tried to take the 14th Amendment and twist it into a power that doesn't exist for a president to ignore Congress, to ignore debt limits, and to pass his own budgets and to spend money in violation of Article 1, where the House has the power originally. are the same Democrats pushing this agenda out of the 14th Amendment. In other words, the 14th Amendment, they pour their hopes and their dreams into it, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with what they're talking about. Now, if you served in the Confederacy, you don't have to be indicted and charged with a crime and go in front of a court and all the rest of it. So it doesn't say anything about having to be convicted per se, of an insurrection. And so these knuckleheads say Trump doesn't even have to be convicted. In fact, he doesn't even have to be charged. It just is what it is. We'll figure it out. It's a disqualifying clause. Of course, there was an Amnesty Act that was passed a few years later, which pretty much neutralized the entire notion of the Insurrection Act, but it doesn't matter. Simon Chase, who was the Chief Justice of the United States, but writing in a really not very famous and not very well known, but one of the few cases addressing this issue, takes a different view than these two knuckleheads. And so what do they say? Oh, the case was poorly reasoned. They say the bottom line is that Donald Trump both engaged in insurrection or rebellion and gave aid and comfort to others engaging in such conduct within the original meaning of those terms as employed in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. If the public record's accurate, the case is not even close. He's no longer eligible the office of the president or any other state or federal office covered by the Constitution. Now, who says he committed an act of insurrection or gave aid and comfort to an insurrection? Who says that? Well, members of the media have. The January 6th Stalinist Commission, which was appointed by the Democrat Speaker of the House, all the members, they say so. Even the rogue prosecutor does not say that. So where do we go to get an answer for that? Where do we go to get an answer for that? Nowhere. There's nowhere to go. Nowhere. Not the Supreme Court. Not Congress. Nowhere. Because it was never intended to apply to this kind of a situation or Donald Trump, where one party and never Trumpers get to say he committed acts of insurrection and aid and comfort to those who were in rebellion. Says who? Says they. And therefore they say, we will decide under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment whether Donald Trump is even qualified under our Constitution. And then you can hear a guy like this, Asa Hutchinson. Cut one, go.
I'm going to support the nominee of the party. I do not expect it to be Donald Trump, and that I'm sure question will come up in the debate to say tune for that. But what I point
wouldn't it be nice if the guy could actually speak? Could actually speak. Go ahead.
He's qualified to be the next president of the United States, and so you can't be asking us to support somebody that's not perhaps even qualified under our Constitution. And I'm referring to the 14th Amendment that a number of legal scholars said that he is disqualified because of his actions on
And so this is how it works. A number of legal scholars who hate Trump. Two morons from the Federalist Society. Two knuckleheads who haven't gotten anything right for decades. That is, Lawrence Tribe and J. Michael Ludig, plus the two morons from the Federalist Society. But there's many legal scholars who say, no, that's not correct. But Asa Hutchinson isn't going to comment on them. No, he's not going to talk about them. So Asa Hutchinson has lied. He's deceived you. He's no intention of supporting whoever the nominee is for the Republican Party to run for president. None. And this talk about the 14th Amendment started with Adam Schiff, as you might imagine. Here we have a piece in WSA 9 CBS in the hours after the unsealing the new federal charges against the former president. Google search data shows inquiries about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment have skyrocketed. And it goes on. House Democrat Representative David Cicilline, who resigned early to do something else, also sent a letter to colleagues asking them to join him in sponsoring legislation that disqualifies Trump from the presidency because of the 14th Amendment. And he references Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But does the clause, they ask, apply to Donald Trump? Dates back to the Civil War. The intention was to prevent the president from allowing former leaders of the Confederacy who engaged in rebellion against the U.S. from holding office after they were granted presidential powers. These are the Civil War amendments. That's what they are. That's what they were intended for. Now, here's what it says. And you're going to have to stick with me for a few segments here as we walk through this, because what I try to do is give you a lesson about our history, economics, philosophy, but mostly the Constitution. It's your Constitution, and people are lying to you about it, including Republicans. No person shall be a senator or representative of Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a two-thirds vote of each house, remove such disability. This was aimed at the Confederates. Nothing more, nothing less. The making good on the debt of the United States that they've also used in the 14th Amendment had nothing to do with anything but the Civil War debt. Period. Several legal experts argue this probably doesn't apply to Trump. They point to three eligibility questions. Number one, notice Asa Hutchinson won't talk about this. Did Trump's conduct amount to engaging in an insurrection? Number two, who does this apply to in the government? Because when you look at impeachment, when they wrote that clause, they specifically talk about, among others, the president. In this 14th Amendment, they don't. They talk about an officer. Is the president an officer? Now, Robert Peck, founder president of the Center for Constitutional Litigation, told Verify, becomes whether Donald Trump engaged in the forbidden conduct. It will be up to Congress to determine if he's guilty of participating in insurrection. Congress did find Trump guilty of engaging in insurrection. That finding could ultimately result in a disqualification from holding office. But constitutional law experts say Trump would likely file a lawsuit to challenge the validity. So that's not really an answer. And here's part of the problem, and we'll continue this after the break. Do you notice where the Democrat Party and Trump haters are dragging this country every damn day? Into uncharted waters. A Manhattan DA bringing bogus indictments against a former president who's running for election in the opposite party. A phony special counsel who uses a documents matter in the Espionage Act, which was obviously intended to prevent espionage originally, as well as the January 6th grand jury charges against the president using the Klan Act, the Enron laws, and financial obstruction had nothing to do with this. And then a Georgia DA who apparently thinks she's a federal prosecutor. That would be bad enough. And it turns out, did you know her father was a very active member of the Black Panthers, Mr. Producer? Did you know that? I hadn't known that. I just looked it up. It's on a Fox story. People keep sending me emails. I keep blowing them off. So finally I looked at one of them. Her father was a Black Panther. Now, these were considered domestic terrorists trying to overthrow the country. Isn't that ironic?